This is a video about game mechanics, and I'm going to talk about threads. Threads is, we'll read what the definition here. Thread is an execution of the smallest sequence. Okay, this is not what a thread is. When you have a software program, an application, and you run it, traditionally, going through that software is a single thread. A thread is an execution of that program that's spawned from the main program that executes a part of that software in parallel with the master control software. So if you have a subroutine, let's say you're reading this paragraph. Let's say this is what the subroutine is. You're reading this paragraph, but then you spawn, let's say someone else is reading it at the same time. That would be an example of a second thread. Now, if you're playing a game like World of Tanks, you might have played and then all of a sudden you notice the enemy team just stopped playing. Their tanks are visible, but they stop moving, they stop firing, and then what happens is your team gets to go and kill everybody and you get incredible damage. That's a sign that their thread stopped executing. And based on the fact, because this has actually happened in the game, the enemy team just becomes unresponsive, and then your team goes and kills everybody. What it indicates is that a team is one thread. Not a player is one thread, but a team is one thread. So your team, you're not one software application. You are two software applications. Your application, your software, is playing against the enemy team's software. You are a thread, they are a thread. The software that executes to run your team is an exact copy of the software that executes to run their team. If you don't do that, you'd have to find a way to take turns. A turn-based game, you take your turn, they take their turn, but it's not fair for a real-time game because what if because one team has the advantage. A team that gets their turn first has the advantage. Because obviously your first turn could be fire your gun at the enemy, and then if their turn is to fire their gun, there's a little bit of a delay. Your ammo arrives first, so that's why it's not fair. So what they do is they make a thread that runs for the whole team, and it's playing on the server against another thread that's running the other team. And these two threads are playing against each other, and it's the most fair way to do it because each team has an equal chance. They're not you cannot do two things at the same time on a CPU in general unless you have pipelining. And then you have issues, memory access. There's only one copy of the memory, so you can only update the memory one at a time. That's just fact. It's impossible to do two memory read-writes at the same time. You have something called locking. Databases have something called locking. If you don't do it that way, one person might shoot at a tank and kill him, and that dead tank, if you didn't have memory locking, could shoot another tank even though he's dead. So what you have to do is you have to lock the tank when you shoot him, kill him, and declare him dead, and during that time, that tank is prevented from firing his gun. If you don't do that, you'd be able to kill him and he'd be able to kill someone else while he's dead. So it's called locking. And you need it for memory, you need it for database access. Technically, you need it for thread execution also. You can't do two things at the same time because then you will have conflicts. So you have two threads playing against each other, and then the game is going to say, okay, this ammo hit this tank and killed it, and that tank hit the first tank and killed it. The ammo hit each other. Then they're going to say, well, who came first? The one that got first got the kill, and if it happened before the other guy fired, then your kill doesn't count. You understand what I mean? So you might, if two tanks are shooting at each other at the same time, but the ammo arrives at the second tank and kills it, but the second tank fired his ammo after that, the server is looking at all of these. You shoot each other, they're both kill shots. The server is saying, well, the ammo killed you before you fired your shot, so your shot technically is invalid. That's what the software has to do because it's not the real world. In the real world, if your tank is killed, you don't have the ability to fire your gun. In video games, it doesn't work that way. In video games, if you shoot a tank and kill it, that tank can still fire back at you and kill you. But the game is ignoring that shot because it's declaring you dead. Okay? So that's basically what happens in the game because of threat execution. The human mind, we're all independent, but software doesn't work that way. If you use independent threads for each tank, that wouldn't happen. If you had an independent thread, then what would happen is the tank would detect that it was hit and killed, and it would know that it cannot fire. But if the thread is for the whole team, you cannot do that because you can't execute two things at the same time. So that's what threading is, and it's used when you have multi-core CPUs and multi-core on the server. Multi-threads allow you to do two different things at the same time. It adds fairness to the game. It increases performance, etc. That's what threads are. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.